Meet Rita. Rita was allegedly forced to have sex with perhaps the most powerful man in the world of professional wrestling.
Vince McMahon has been at the center of numerous sexual scandals over the years, and each time he has somehow wiggled his way out of accountability. But not anymore, because his daughter has had enough, and what she revealed threatens to take Vince down once and for all. So, what did Stephanie McMahon reveal? Let me put you up to speed. The shocking storyline proposal. The wrestling world has always had its share of controversial storylines, especially during the infamous Attitude Era of the late 1990s and early 2000s. But what was recently revealed in Netflix's docuseries, Mr. McMahon, goes beyond what many fans thought possible, even for a company known for pushing boundaries. So what exactly is this terrifying revelation that's changed everything? According to multiple reports, including Business Insider, during WWE's Attitude Era, Vince McMahon wrote a storyline where his character would impregnate his own daughter Stephanie's character. Yes, you read that correctly. The former CEO and chairman of WWE actually proposed an incestuous storyline involving himself and his real-life daughter. This shocking admission came directly from Vince McMahon himself in episode 5 of the Netflix docuseries Mr. McMahon, which was released a few months ago. The documentary explores McMahon's career and the numerous controversies that have followed him throughout the years. While wrestling fans have long been aware of some of Vince's more outlandish creative decisions, this particular revelation left even the most jaded wrestling observers speechless. People magazine confirmed the details of this proposed storyline, noting that while it was written, it was ultimately nixed and never made it to television. Thank goodness for that small mercy, at least. But the mere fact that such a storyline was even conceptualized speaks volumes about the creative environment within WWE during this era and raises serious questions about professional boundaries within the company. It's important to understand the context in which this storyline was proposed. The Attitude Era was characterized by edgy, often sexually explicit content that pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable on television. This was the era of Stone Cold Steve Austin's anti-establishment persona, The Rock's charismatic trash-talking, and D-Generation X's crude antics. WWE was in a ratings war with WCW, and shock value was a key weapon in their arsenal, even in this context, however. An incestuous storyline between a father and daughter stands out as particularly egregious. The fact that it involved the company's owner and his actual daughter makes it all the more disturbing. This wasn't just two unrelated performers playing fictional characters. This was Vince McMahon suggesting that he and Stephanie portray an incestuous relationship on national television. When asked about this revelation in the docuseries, Stephanie McMahon was understandably reticent. When questioned if there were storylines she refused to participate in, she acknowledged, yeah, there were a couple, but I'm not going to tell the one. This cryptic response leaves us wondering if the impregnation storyline was among those she rejected, but she chose not to confirm or deny this specifically. Stephanie has been more forthcoming in the past about feeling uncomfortable with certain storylines her father asked her to perform. In previous interviews, she has mentioned that she sometimes felt a little weird when asked to do certain things by her father, acknowledging that it was a different time in our business. BBC and Fightful News have both reported on these comments, which take on a much darker context in light of the recent revelation. The proposed impregnation storyline wasn't the only controversial plot involving Stephanie during this era. She was also part of a storyline where her character was drugged and married to Triple H, who would later become her real-life husband. The Wrap reported this as one of the many controversial storylines from this period. While problematic by today's standards, even this pales in comparison to the incestuous storyline Vince had envisioned. It's worth noting that Stephanie McMahon has held various roles within WWE throughout her career, including creative director, chief brand officer, and even interim CEO during investigations into her father's misconduct in 2022. She has been deeply involved in both the creative and business aspects of the company, making her perspective on these matters particularly significant. The revelation about this proposed storyline has sparked widespread discussion about the creative process in WWE during the Attitude Era. Many fans and wrestling analysts have questioned how such a storyline could have been seriously considered, even in an era known for controversial content. Others have pointed out that this is just one example of the problematic content that characterized that period in wrestling history. To fully appreciate the gravity of this revelation, we need to understand who Vince and Stephanie McMahon are within the wrestling world. Vince McMahon transformed WWE, formerly WWF, from a regional promotion into a global entertainment powerhouse. He revolutionized the wrestling business and became a billionaire in the process. Stephanie, born into this wrestling dynasty, has been a key figure both on screen and behind the scenes for decades. The dynamics between the McMahon family members have often been complicated, with the lines between their real-life relationships and their on-screen personas frequently blurred. Wrestling Inc. has documented how family members, including Stephanie, were part of on-screen narratives that sometimes created uncomfortable situations. The Netflix docuseries has brought to light other disturbing aspects of Vince McMahon's behavior and the WWE corporate culture, but the proposed incestuous storyline stands out as particularly shocking. It represents a crossing of boundaries that, even in an industry known for its outlandish storylines, seems unconscionable. But this isn't the only scandalous situation Vince has found himself in over the years. Some of what you're about to hear is simply next-level stuff. The pattern of controversy. The proposed impregnation storyline, as disturbing as it is, represents just one example of questionable judgment in a career marked by numerous controversies. To understand the full picture, we need to examine the pattern of scandals that have followed Vince McMahon throughout his career. Let's start with one of the earliest major controversies, the steroid trial of 1993 to 1994. Vince McMahon was indicted for allegedly conspiring to distribute anabolic steroids to WWE wrestlers following the conviction of Dr. George Zahorian, a ringside doctor who supplied steroids to WWF wrestlers. According to reports, the trial lasted 18 days, and McMahon was eventually acquitted in 1994. During the trial, testimony revealed widespread steroid use in professional wrestling, with McMahon accused of using company funds to purchase steroids for wrestlers. Despite these allegations, he was found not guilty of the charges. Vice has referred to this as the forgotten steroid trial that almost brought down Vince McMahon, highlighting how close he came to potentially losing control of his wrestling empire. Moving forward in time, in 1992, former WWF referee Rita Chatterton publicly accused McMahon of raping her in his limousine on July 15, 1986, following a WWE event at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, New York. The details of her accusation are both specific and disturbing. Chatterton alleged that during this encounter, McMahon promised her a $500,000 annual contract but demanded sexual favors in return. When she refused his advances, she claims the situation escalated dramatically. According to her account, McMahon forced her into oral sex, and when she couldn't complete what he wanted, he allegedly became angry and violent.
I was forced into oral sex with Vince McMahon. When I couldn't complete his desires, he got really angry, started ripping off my jeans, pulled me on top of him, and told me again, if I wanted a $500,000 a year contract, I had to satisfy him.
She stated that McMahon ripped off her jeans, pulled her on top of him, and raped her. Perhaps most chillingly, Chatterton claims that after the assault, Vince tried to threaten her that she would be blackballed from the industry if she spoke out about what had happened.
The very first time I met Vince, I was told that if I had any sexual relationships with anyone in the Federation, I was done. My career was done. I was engaged. I had no problem with that. When Vince was said and done, Vince looked at me and said, "Do you remember what I told you about having sexual relationships with anyone? Well, you just did."
What adds weight to Chatterton's allegations is the corroboration from another wrestling industry figure. Leonard Inzitari, a former wrestler known as Mario Mancini, has publicly stated that he found Chatterton crying and visibly shaken immediately after the alleged incident. According to Inzitari, Chatterton confided in him about what had happened in McMahon's limousine. Inzitari recalled that Chatterton told him, "I was in Vince's limo. He took his penis out, kind of forced my head down there, and I made it known I wasn't interested. Then Vince pulled me on top of him. He was inside her." Inzitari has explained that his fear of professional repercussions kept him from speaking out earlier, highlighting the power dynamics that often complicate reporting in such cases. Chatterton didn't immediately go public with her allegations. It wasn't until 1992, 6 years after the alleged incident, that she first publicly accused McMahon on Geraldo Rivera's television shows, Now It Can Be Told, and The Geraldo Rivera Show. By this time, however, the statute of limitations for pressing criminal charges had expired, which meant that no criminal prosecution could occur regardless of the evidence. Following Chatterton's public accusations in 1992, Vince and Linda McMahon filed a lawsuit in 1993 against Chatterton, Geraldo Rivera, and others, alleging conspiracy and false rape accusations. This legal action was later discontinued in 1994, reportedly because McMahon was focusing on defending himself in a separate steroid distribution trial, from which he was eventually acquitted. For her part, Chatterton considered taking legal action, but ultimately didn't pursue it further. She cited fear and a lack of physical evidence as reasons for not proceeding. She had not visited a hospital after the alleged assault and had showered, which meant that crucial physical evidence was not preserved. After these events, Chatterton largely withdrew from public life, working as a youth counselor until her retirement in 2018 due to health issues. The allegations resurfaced dramatically in 2022 amid reports by the Wall Street Journal that McMahon had paid $14.6 million between 2006 and 2022 to suppress allegations of sexual misconduct and infidelity. These payments had not been declared in WWE's financial accounts, leading to investigations by the SEC and federal authorities. This context brought renewed attention to Chatterton's claims. Taking advantage of a New York law that temporarily removed the statute of limitations for sex crime victims, Chatterton, through her lawyer, demanded $11.75 million in damages in November 2022. By December 2022, McMahon agreed to a settlement. While the exact figure remains undisclosed, reports indicate it was a multi-million-dollar amount, less than her initial demand, paid in a combination of a lump sum and annual installments. McMahon's lawyer, Jerry McDevitt, made the following statement about the settlement. Mr. McMahon denies and always has denied raping Ms. Chatterton, and he settled the case solely to avoid the cost of litigation, emphasizing that the settlement should not be interpreted as an admission of guilt. However, in 2023, amid renewed scrutiny following other misconduct allegations, McMahon settled with Chatterton for an undisclosed multi-million-dollar amount while still denying the allegations. The fact that he chose to settle after decades of denials raised eyebrows among many observers. In 2006, another sexual misconduct allegation emerged when a 22-year-old tanning salon employee in Boca Raton, Florida, accused McMahon of groping and attempting to kiss her. According to the Daily Beast, police found probable cause for misdemeanor, simple battery, but prosecutors did not file charges due to a lack of independent evidence. This allegation resurfaced in 2018 during the #MeToo movement, drawing renewed attention to McMahon's history of misconduct claims. According to reports, when this incident occurred in 2006, Stephanie McMahon was reportedly red-hot and furious about the allegations, according to former WWE creative member Chris D. Joseph, as reported by Ringside News. The most significant recent controversies began in 2022 when the WWE board launched an investigation into a $3 million hush money payment McMahon made to former WWE employee Janelle Grant. Further investigation uncovered approximately $12 million in total payments to 4 women over the years, with at least 2 alleging sexual misconduct. According to WrestleNomics, these revelations led to McMahon temporarily stepping down as CEO and chairman of WWE in June 2022. This is when Stephanie McMahon stepped in as interim CEO, pledging cooperation with the investigation. NPR covered her appointment, noting the unprecedented nature of the situation within the company. Despite the investigation, Vince McMahon returned to WWE in January 2023, using his position as majority shareholder to reinstate himself on the board of directors. Shortly after his return, Stephanie resigned from her position as co-CEO, with ESPN reporting on her departure. Another significant scandal that has resurfaced recently is the Ring Boy scandal from the late 1980s and early 1990s. Allegations surfaced in 1992 that ring announcer Mel Phillips sexually exploited young boys hired as ring boys, with McMahon and others accused of negligence. Phillips, Terry Garvin, and Pat Patterson were dismissed from the company when these allegations became public. In October 2024, a new lawsuit was filed by 5 survivors claiming that Vince McMahon, Linda McMahon, WWE, and TKO allowed systemic abuse. According to Cageside Seats, the lawsuit was filed in Maryland, where there is no statute of limitations for child sex abuse cases. The lawsuit alleges that the McMahons either knew or should have known about the abuse, but fostered a culture of misconduct. This lawsuit was briefly stayed in December 2024, pending a challenge to the law's constitutionality, but the Supreme Court of Maryland ruled it constitutional in February 2025, allowing proceedings to continue. CBS News reported on these developments, highlighting the ongoing nature of this case. It's worth noting that these are not the only scandals that have plagued WWE over the years. The wrestling industry has a long history of controversial practices and behaviors, with the WWE under Vince McMahon's leadership often at the center of these controversies. For instance, the Speaking Out movement in 2020 saw numerous wrestlers, including several from WWE, accused of sexual misconduct, leading to investigations and releases. The infamous Plane Ride from Hell in 2002, where intoxicated wrestlers allegedly harassed flight attendants, has also become notorious in wrestling lore. Sable, Reyna Mero, filed a $110 million lawsuit against WWE in 1999, alleging sexual harassment and unsafe working conditions. allegations, including claims of men routinely walking into women's dressing rooms and pressure to perform in sexually explicit storylines. The Sportster detailed these allegations, which were eventually settled out of court. Throughout all these controversies, Stephanie McMahon has navigated a complex position as both a McMahon family member and a WWE executive. She has been part of the company's leadership during many of these scandals, raising questions about her awareness and response to these issues. When her father stepped down as CEO in 2022 amid the hush money investigation, Stephanie stepped in as interim CEO, promising a thorough investigation. However, when Vince forced his way back onto the board in early 2023, Stephanie resigned from her position. Her exact reasons for resigning have not been explicitly stated, leading to speculation about potential disagreements with her father's return. Recent social media activity from Stephanie has focused on promoting Stephanie's Places, a show on ESPN Plus where she interviews WWE personalities, with no mention of the allegations against her father. Her ex-posts from April 2025 show her continuing her career separately from the controversies surrounding her father. The revelation about the proposed incestuous storyline takes on an even darker context when viewed alongside these other allegations and controversies. It suggests a pattern of boundary crossing and inappropriate behavior that has characterized Vince McMahon's career, both in creative decisions and in personal conduct. And still, in 2025, Vince is still in the middle of cases of sexual misconduct. The aftermath and implications. The Netflix docuseries Mr. McMahon has brought renewed attention to Vince McMahon's controversial career and raised serious questions about the culture he fostered within WWE. The revelation about the proposed impregnation storyline is particularly troubling because it demonstrates a willingness to blur professional and personal boundaries in extremely inappropriate ways. This revelation comes at a time when Vince McMahon is facing unprecedented legal challenges. The sex trafficking lawsuit filed by Janelle Grant in January 2024 contains serious allegations that have fundamentally altered his public image. According to the lawsuit documents, Grant was in a vulnerable position when she first met McMahon in March 2019. She had recently experienced the death of her parents and faced family bankruptcy, creating financial and emotional hardship. The lawsuit alleges that McMahon recognized this vulnerability and exploited it, initially offering her employment opportunities and gifts, including a VIP WrestleMania experience. What started as a parent-professional mentorship allegedly transformed into something much more sinister. Grant began working at WWE on June 17, 2019, as an administrator coordinator with a $75,000 salary. However, the lawsuit claims that her employment was contingent upon maintaining a sexual relationship with McMahon, creating a power dynamic that Grant felt unable to escape from. The allegations in this case are genuinely disturbing. The lawsuit details a pattern of exploitation that escalated over time. One of the most shocking claims involves a May 9, 2020 incident where McMahon allegedly shit on Grant during a sexual encounter and ordered her to continue performing sexual acts while covered in shit. The lawsuit states this caused her to experience disassociation, a serious psychological response to trauma. Another particularly troubling allegation describes a June 2021 incident involving a forced threesome with McMahon and John Laurinaitis, another WWE executive, at WWE headquarters while colleagues were nearby. Despite the proximity of other employees, the lawsuit claims no one intervened. Perhaps most shocking are the claims that McMahon allegedly shared explicit photos and videos of Grant with others, including TV production teams, WWE executives, and even a world-famous athlete identified in later filings as a former UFC heavyweight champion. This distribution of explicit content without consent is at the heart of some of the trafficking allegations. The legal proceedings in this case have followed a complex path. In January 2022, Grant signed a non-disclosure agreement under what the lawsuit describes as duress. She reportedly received $1 million of a promised $3 million, with payments stopping by February 2023, which her legal team argues constitutes a breach of the agreement. The lawsuit includes multiple serious legal claims against McMahon, Laurinaitis, and WWE itself. These include violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, civil battery, negligence, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Grant is seeking both compensatory and punitive damages, legal fees, and to void the NDA she signed. For their part, McMahon and the other defendants have categorically denied all allegations, with McMahon's legal team characterizing characterizing the claims as replete with lies. In response to Grant's amended complaint in January 2025, McMahon's legal team called it bad faith, arguing it seeks media advantage rather than legal remedy. The impact of this case extends far beyond the courtroom. Grant has reported experiencing debilitating post-traumatic stress and thoughts of suicide, even losing a subsequent job due to trauma. Her spokesperson, Kendra Barkoff-Lamy, has been vocal about the situation, criticizing WWE's lack of a sexual harassment policy and highlighting what she describes as a toxic work culture. As of April 22, 2025, this lawsuit remains unresolved. The legal battle continues over the amended complaint and potential arbitration, with no final resolution yet determined. What's clear is that this case has forever changed the legacy of Vince McMahon and raised serious questions about power, accountability, and workplace safety within WWE. But what about Stephanie McMahon? How has she navigated these controversies, and what does her future in wrestling look like? Stephanie's tenure in WWE has been marked by her ability to adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining her connection to the McMahon legacy. She has held numerous executive positions, including creative director, chief brand officer, and interim CEO during the 2022 investigations into her father's misconduct. When Vince temporarily stepped down in 2022, Stephanie stepped in as interim CEO, with NPR reporting her pledge to cooperate fully with the investigation. This positioned her as a stabilizing force during a turbulent time for the company. However, when Vince used his position as majority shareholder to force his way back onto the board in January 2023, Stephanie resigned from her position. According to ESPN, she cited a desire to focus on her family as the reason for her departure, but many speculated that there might have been disagreements about her father's return. It's worth noting that Stephanie has been present during many of WWE's controversies, raising questions about her awareness and response to these issues. The recent revelation about the proposed incestuous storyline places her in a particularly difficult position, as it directly involved her character and person. The question of what Stephanie knew about her father's alleged misconduct remains open. While there are no allegations of wrongdoing against her personally, her position as a high-ranking executive during many of these controversies raises questions about the corporate culture at WWE and who was aware of potential misconduct. When the tanning salon employee accused Vince of misconduct in 2006, Stephanie was reportedly red-hot and furious, according to former WWE creative member Christy Joseph, as reported by Ringside News. This suggests she was not always aware of or complicit in her father's alleged behavior. The revelation about the proposed incestuous storyline has also sparked broader discussions about the creative process in WWE during the Attitude Era and the boundaries of acceptable content in professional wrestling. While the wrestling industry has long pushed the envelope with controversial storylines, the proposed impregnation plot crossed a line that many consider unacceptable by any standard. This controversy has also led to renewed scrutiny of other problematic storylines from WWE's past, particularly those involving women and family relationships. The blurring of lines between real-life relationships and on-screen personas has been a hallmark of WWE storytelling, but the proposed incestuous storyline represents an extreme example of this approach. It's important to note that the wrestling industry has evolved significantly in recent years, with greater emphasis on athlete safety, more diverse representation, and more responsible storytelling. WWE's current product, under the leadership of Triple H, Paul Levesque, has moved away from the more exploitative and controversial content that characterized the Attitude Era. The company has also implemented policies to address misconduct allegations, including investigations and releases of talent accused of inappropriate behavior. During the Speaking Out movement in 2020, WWE issued statements emphasizing zero tolerance for domestic violence, child abuse, and sexual assault, with actions ranging from investigations to releases. However, the legacy of Vince McMahon's leadership continues to cast a long shadow over the company. The revelations from the Netflix docuseries and the ongoing legal challenges he faces raise questions about accountability within WWE and the wrestling industry as a whole. For fans who grew up watching WWE during the Attitude Era, these revelations may prompt a reevaluation of content they once enjoyed uncritically. The knowledge that Vince McMahon proposed an incestuous storyline involving his real-life daughter adds a disturbing context to other boundary-pushing content from that era. It's also worth considering how these revelations might affect Stephanie McMahon's legacy within the wrestling industry. As one of the most prominent women in wrestling history, both as a performer and executive, her career has been inextricably linked to her father's. The recent controversies may complicate this legacy, even if she personally rejected the proposed storyline. As for Vince McMahon himself, his legacy has been irreparably altered by these revelations and allegations. Once celebrated as a visionary who transformed professional wrestling into a global entertainment phenomenon, phenomenon, he is now also viewed as a deeply flawed and controversial figure whose judgment and behavior have raised serious ethical questions. If you enjoyed this video, click on the boxes playing on your screen to watch similar content.